On April 7th, 2 days after his fight with the new Bristol fighters, Manfred von Richthofen was promoted to the rank of Rittmeister, cavalry captain. To celebrate the promotion, Manfred went aloft in a factory-fresh new Albatross and sent a Nieuport fighter down in flames. Hunting alongside the master, Kurt Wolff had scored his 7th victory, and Emil Schaefer had bagged his 12th kill. On the same day von Richthofen received his promotion, Woodrow Wilson, the President of the United States, announced a formal declaration of war against the Central Powers, and America was finally committed to the fight against Imperial Germany. While sympathies had run strong for England and France, America had steadfastly managed to maintain her neutrality. After the British passenger liner Lusitania was torpedoed and sunk with 114 Americans on board, public opinion had grown steadily in favor of America's entry into the war. On March 1st, the famed Zimmermann telegram had been made public to further the outrage of the American people. The telegram had been a secret communique from the German foreign minister urging Mexico to join in an alliance against the United States. For the moment, America's declaration had little impact on the daily routine of the war. It wouldn't be until early November that American troops would actually appear in battle. But with war declared, thousands of young Americans queued up in the enlistment lines as the nation began preparing to join in on the great European conflict. The American public had eagerly followed the story of the Great War being raged in the skies over France. The exploits of the Lafayette Escadrille and the famous aces had captured the public's imagination and spurred hundreds of young men to sail for France, hoping to join the famous squadron. Others had slipped over the Canadian border and enlisted with the Royal Flying Corps. By April 1917, the Lafayette Escadrille had been expanded to the Lafayette Flying Corps to accommodate the influx of new volunteers. While the Escadrille still operated as a uniquely American squadron fighting under the French flag, the Corps was set up to absorb the overflow of American volunteers into regular French units. James Norman Hall was 29 years old when he turned up at the French flying school at Buck to begin his lessons. Hall, a native of Colfax, Iowa, was a journalist who'd enlisted to fight with the British Army and had served in the trenches through the end of 1915, before returning home where he settled in Boston and lectured about the war. A book about his experiences, Kitchener's Mob, sold well, and when the Atlantic Monthly magazine suggested that Hall return to Europe to furnish a series of articles about the Lafayette Escadrille, he again set sail. Once in France, and after spending time with the famous American volunteers, Hall could not resist the lure of what he deemed a great adventure and wrangled his way into the service. Although he would initially serve with the Lafayette Escadrille, as the Corps expanded, Hall was reassigned to Escadrille Spad No. 112, where he served until October before being transferred back to the All-American Group. After getting caught up in the story he'd been sent to cover for the Atlantic Monthly, Hall had never submitted the articles they'd hoped for, and after the war he would go on to pen a series of books, both fact and fiction, about his adventures, including a massive 2-volume history of the Lafayette Flying Corps. April had ended spectacularly well for the Red Baron. On the 29th he downed 4 enemy machines, including one of the Sopwith triplanes belonging to Naval 8. 20 aircraft and 38 men had fallen victim to his guns since the beginning of the month, and his score now sat at 52 kills. Jasta 11 wasn't the only unit that had shown such stunning successes throughout April, but they'd certainly led the pack in scoring. Lothar von Richthofen had shot down 14 planes. Emil Schaefer had claimed 15 kills. Kurt Wolff, like his famous squadron leader, had destroyed 20 enemy planes. And Heinrich Gontermann had claimed another 9 victories. The month ended and von Richthofen was ordered on leave. With a simple handshake, command of Jasta 11 was handed over to his brother before Manfred climbed into the back seat of an all-red Albatross 2-seater and began his trip home. Across the lines, the Royal Flying Corps was in shambles. With 1/3 of its machines and men wiped out, the average lifespan of a British flyer at the front had been a scant 2 weeks. Overworked and forced to fly machines that should have been condemned a year or more earlier, men had been pushed far past the breaking point and now seemed on the verge of a total collapse.